It is Friday, November 29th, 2019. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. And it was a no jujitsu, get your ass kicked at Jiu-Jitsu Friday. Unfortunately, there was no Jiu-Jitsu today. I feel deprived, man. I'm definitely going to be getting in a little bit of cardio during the first music break of today's show because, damn it, I need it. It's like an addiction. I almost stepped into stopped by the 10th Planet affiliate just to get some sweat in, just to get some jiu-jitsu in. But I'm not quite that addicted at this point. I figured it was a little bit too late to just pop into their class, especially because they do a relatively lengthy warm-up, and they like to be really, really warm before they start working on technique and stuff. And so, I felt like it might be a little bit rude to pop in right in the middle of the warm-ups. So I opted to let it go. I might try and get in tomorrow, but I don't typically go in on Saturdays, and I'd kind of reserved the day for other stuff. So definitely going to have to get in the cardio today. I did do my my pre-class cardio warm-up, and I got to tell you, that's done a lot to straighten up my game. And I think it's done a lot to put me in a little more relaxed state when I go into jiu-jitsu, because anxiety is a bit of a bitch for me, and it's actually prevented me from going to jiu-jitsu at one point or another. Although I've managed to power through it and get there, but the point being that it's a significant kind of obstacle that's gotten in the way of my jiu-jitsu journey at one point or another. And so, but I found out that if I do just 5 to 10 minutes of some relatively intense cardio, that when I go in there, I've already gotten my heart rate up to like a 70 or 80% max for a few minutes. And so when I get back to that state, it seems like it opens the panic window. There's like this window that you're operating in when you're in jiu-jitsu, right? Where if you hit a certain point where you get too tired, or you're just exerting too much energy or something to that effect, where it slows you down, where you start panicking. Okay, and everybody hits this, and as a matter of fact, it's one of the things I watch for, and I'm a little bit slower player, but one of the things I'm always watching for is for my opponent to get frustrated, because it usually indicates to me that they're getting tired, or at least a little bit tired, and so they'll oftentimes try like a really hard burst at that point to try and get around my guard or something to that effect, and in doing so they kind of tired themselves out. And that's one of the things I look for, but there's that window where you go from being competent and on guard and in the moment to thinking ahead, feeling tired, and getting anxious and getting frustrated. And so like I said, it's causing your heart rate to go up, it's causing your respiration to go up, and it's killing your wind. It's killing your long-term wind. It might get you through that moment, but if you don't have a good recovery, or you aren't like in a really secure position by the time you need a little bit of relief, you're going to find yourself fighting for that same thing again. And also, if you had to burst to get there, chances are you're already going to be at a deficiency while you're trying to hold it. It's not enough to just gain ground. You got to be able to hold it. If you can't hold the ground, then all the effort that you dedicated to getting it is all for naught. So, anyway, I find that by doing that cardio and spiking my heart rate, it kind of opens that window up a little bit further. I feel like I got a little bit more room in my mind, before I really have to start worrying about how I'm expending my energy because I'm kind of freaking out, or I'm holding the wrong thing too hard, or just a million little factors in your game that you just got to watch yourself for. And it's a part of personal discipline, to be gauging yourself as though you might be at this for another 10, 15 minutes. Whether it's with this opponent or another one when they're Shark Tanking you or something like that. You've got to be able to pace yourself. You got to time yourself to where you're not making those exertions unless it's like a 99% fatality that you're going to lock in that arm bar, or you're going to lock in that triangle. It's going to be worth the effort that you've dedicated to it. And that's a big part of the discipline of jiu-jitsu and martial arts in general, is biding your time, making the proper setup, and timing your attack to where it's most effective. Your opponent's already moving that way. They're shifting their weight into you, and it's just flowing the right way. That's one of the reasons why I talk about the way that I attack people. Is that I want them to be dedicating the energy. I want them tired. I want them hopeless and helpless, and then I want to get them. I mean, call me cruel, whatever, but that's what I'm setting up for. And I'm starting to catch stuff like that. And more times than not, I find that if I'm not looking immediately for some sort of submission, that they just drift to me. I had one the other day, a perfect Americana, and I didn't give away at all that that's what I was setting up for. Like, so for one thing, the initial grip, I started with a pistol grip on his sleeve, and where that makes a difference is that I have the control over his arm, but he doesn't feel the pressure directly on his skin. It's not me grabbing onto his forearm, because that's a dead giveaway. Somebody grabs your wrist and they're on top of you, the chances are they're either going to go for a Kimura or an Americana. They got to control that wrist so they can control the arm, so they can put it in a right position to submit you, right? Well, on this particular one, like I said, I grabbed the sleeve, and I waited until I had his arm in a position to where it was in almost a 90-degree angle, and actually his elbow was a little bit lower than his shoulder, so it wasn't as obvious that that's what I was setting up for. And I just held down the arm until I was able to sneak the other one under and grab my own wrist and pop that up in Americana. And so that, like I said, that whole setup thing, I was trying to focus his energy elsewhere. So I was kind of putting my forearm up against his neck and stuff at one point, and trying to grab for his other lapel. So he thinks I'm going for some sort of zipper choke or some shit like that. And I really want that arm instead. And he kind of reached up for the choke, and that's where I grabbed that sleeve. And I just pushed his wrist down, and that had him at like a 90-degree angle, slipped the arm under, and it was Dunsky. I just changed my position to where I got a knee on belly and rotated it up, and that was it. And anywho, that's about what I've got there. Let's go ahead and throw down with some music. I got a lot of stuff to talk about today, whether or not it's going to be just a whole bunch of articles repeating the same shit, or if we're actually going to get all of the meat of it. I'm not entirely sure, but I've got a few tabs laid out, so we're not completely in the dark for subject matter today. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw down some music. First dance, we're going to go with body count, so it's got to be the ski mask way. First dance, here on Coin Metal. And that was Coal Chamber with Sway. Yeah, I let it run one additional, but I was getting in some cardio, and it went from Coming For You to Sway, and I had to go with it. I'm very sorry, but it had to be done. Man, that's excellent water. And no, it's not from a bottle. I think bottled water is like a crime against nature. Not just humanity, like nature. Period. Anyway, I got this. I came across this article, and I don't know what the progress is at the moment. Although this particular article was, I guess it was done this year, like July 2019, and so the first articles I saw about this were in like 2015. So it gives you an idea that maybe there has been some forward progress on this thing. Anyway, it's on hempearth.ca. The world's first plane made from and powered by hemp. Now you know why I'm reading it. Hemp Earth Group is set to build the world's first plane made from and powered by hemp. Not only is the plane set to run on Hemp Earth Hemp Jet A biofuel, but it is set to be built almost entirely from hemp. Everything from seats, the wings, the plane walls, and even the pillows are set to contain hemp. Some details about the world's first hemp plane. The world's first plane made from and powered by hemp can hold one pilot and 4 very lucky passengers. The wingspan is 36 feet. Why build a plane made from hemp? Cannabis/hemp, in addition to being one of the world's healthiest and most versatile plants on Earth, hemp is pound for pound 10 times stronger than steel. This means that it can withstand a lot more weight before it breaks, and it can bend way further than metal. Great for aviation. Additionally, traditional aerospace materials are heavier than hemp and toxic and not sustainable. Most manufacturers use aluminum and fiberglass to build planes. Hemp is significantly lighter and therefore requires a lot less fuel to get up and in the sky. Most importantly, hemp is an environmentally friendly material. Hemp requires way less water and land to grow on than cotton, and even puts nutrients back into the soil through a process called phytoremediation. Compared to steel, which requires mining or carbon fiber produced from plastic, hemp has almost no environmental impact. Who designed it? Canadian cannabis company Hemp Earth and the leader in hemp and marijuana developed the world's first hemp plane. Founded in 2012, Hemp Earth also sells 100% hemp surfboards, paddleboards, oils, cannabis, 100% hemp board, and a variety of organic products. And the company is also developing the world's first hemp fiber body phone. I think that's going a little far, but that's just me. Florida company Velocity Inc. is set to manufacture the plane, and a signed manufacturing contract is in place. Hemp Earth Group is also just finishing up some never before developed hemp composites in Montreal that is set to replace all fiberglass in aviation and many other industries. The company is also The company also turned down DuPont, as they don't and never will sign or work with fascist companies that are associated with military, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, or the military-industrial complex. That's one of those value-based decisions. You know, if you don't like any of those people, you know who to do business with now. Hemp Earth founder Derek Kessick is interested in hemp as a sustainable material. Quote, "This is the kind of future we all want here on Earth," Kessick says, hinting at hemp's potential as a building material. Kessick and Hemp Earth are perfectly poised for more hemp innovation with the USA's recent legalization. Final hit. The world's first plane made from and powered by hemp. Medicinally or otherwise, hemp's uses are endless, with increased pollution from everything from mining to plastics to jet fuel. Hemp offers an environmentally friendly and more efficient way to travel. Also, when the first hemp plane is completed, its first flight is set to take place at Wright Brothers Memorial in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. the birthplace of personal aviation. Yes. And apparently 11 people have commented on this. Let's see, July 9th, 2019. This is probably why it came up as like a relatively recent article, because of this remark here. No, actually, it must have been dated that, because all of the comments are dated from July 9th forward. So this one is from Florence Madron. Wow, fascinating. Next one is from Mark Appleman. This plant restrained from trade all these years, it's a natural healing panacea that will democratize healthcare, improve the quality of many building materials, and is so many ways improve all of our lives. Hemp Earth, and yeah, I believe so, sir. Let's see here. Amazing and exciting for the world, says Terry Stewart. Couldn't agree more. Tammy says, this is awesome. Hope to see more, as well as other items, etc. I couldn't agree more, Tammy. I had to make a minor adjustment here. Alan Clark says, I would love to have airplanes made out of and powered by hemp. I'd love all vehicles to be made out of and powered by hemp. I'd love to have almost everything made out of and powered by hemp, and anything not needing a power source made out of hemp. Dude, that's like a hemp farmer right there. He's got a little bit of an interest, I would assume. Let's see, Eternal says, reposted as out of this world. Listen, this plane used to be the crops of hemp plants. Stop and really think about that. An airplane used to be plants, and it's fueled by a substance derived from those same plants. Alchemy is real, both physical and mental. What good, responsible things will you make out of this world? I couldn't agree more, man. That's very, very deep. Eternal. My apologies on that. And last one here is, or second to last apparently, John Carney says, Henry Ford made a car from hemp, and I think it was the turning point to make marijuana legal across the globe. This car was almost impervious to a baseball bat. Most of the car, except the motor and exhaust, was hemp. The steel industry was very scared. The medical industry was scared. The alcohol industry was scared. Then, that Marijuana Madness movie, which was a load of crap, I wrote a term paper in 9th grade about marijuana. These were things that I found that were complete lies. Many of our first politicians grew marijuana, probably smoked a bit of it too. Good luck. Thank you, John. Definitely true. And John Douglas Coutinho says, I wish hemp heals the earth, restores balance to nature. Yes, definitely. Derek is your wish is your command. And the last one here is by Svet Vernuige. May all planes be replaced by these in some years. Imagine what that could mean to the environment. Now, all of these people are talking on points that, to me, are beyond just mere like ethical or moral questions. You know, they're talking about ecological concerns. And we have had all of this hullabaloo about global warming and stuff like that, and the massive attempt to associate that directly with our industrial activity on this planet and our recreational vehicle activity. And that in my opinion is simply incorrect. Personally, I believe that such people that are espousing things such as the Green New Deal, they don't necessarily want to enhance the earth any. They just want to stop you from driving. Because you being able to drive your own vehicle and have independent movement, at any time, you can just say, you know what? Fuck this shit. I'm going to go fill my tank with gasoline and just drive off into the sunset. Wherever I end up, I end up. That's more freedom than human beings have had for, I couldn't even tell you. But they're trying to take it back away. And so the thing is that most of most of the vehicles that are in existence right now are running on a substance that is very, very toxic for the environment. Now, if we were talking about cleaning up the environment, the whole dialogue and the whole narrative would be different. Because now we're talking about improving the lives of ourselves and everything else on the planet, not make you take the fucking bus to work. Make you take the train to work. So you're on somebody else's travel schedule and you're on somebody else's movement. Somebody else has control of where you're going and how you're going to get there and when you're going to get there. And that to me is the whole point of it. It has the Green New Deal and all that has absolutely nothing to do with improving the planet. You know, they talk about stalling a lot of things that are private business that were started by families, that are run by families. And in my eyes, what that end of it is about disempowering those people. Because if you take away their industry, they cannot exert political force. You know, they can't be talking to their congresspeople or their state representatives and saying, hey, I'd really like you to put through this policy. You know, or when Monsanto comes to them and says the same thing, that they could come up and say, well, no, I'm a farmer from your district and this is going to hurt me. And so, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want you to make that a law. And see, the congressperson or the representative in question has to listen to them. Because they represent an employment base, you know. Because that one farmer, he probably employs 5 to 20, maybe even more people to do things, and those people vote. So if he goes out of business, they lose their jobs. They're not going to feel very good about you, you know. And so that there's so much that we're fed in media that like doesn't even relate to that. I mean, it doesn't even like give you the impression that there's anything like that going on. Okay, just tax the rich guy because the rich guy has money and we got to take that money. They're not paying their fair share. Fuck that. Why are you fantasizing about stealing somebody else's money? Why aren't you fantasizing about making your own? It'll take you just as much energy either way. I mean, really. And it's probably going to cost you just as much money and time and effort. It might not. You know, you might get lucky the first time. But the thing is this. All you've done is you've created a dependence. Now you constantly have to look for other people to steal fucking money from. And before you know it, that person is the person right next door to you who's the same economic base as you. And you're talking about that guy and how much more he's got. And, you know, Bernie Sanders, you know, he talks about billionaires. He doesn't talk about millionaires anymore, and it's because he is one. If he were making less than $1 million, or if he had less than $1 million, he'd be talking about millionaires in the same context that he talks about billionaires in. If he were a bum on the street, he would be talking about you, your parents, your next door neighbors, people that aren't millionaires even. Oh, hey, they've got personal property. They own a house or they own a car. We got to tax them because they've got too much fucking money. And what does that do to your agency with your representatives? I mean, it's a lot easier to ignore a crowd of people if they're wearing rags and they're starving and stuff. You can fucking ignore those people. You could just like put those people in camps and shit because you've got really rich banker donors that are giving you fucking money. Hey man, it's cool. I'll just serve their interests and everything will be fine. But see what hemp does, and what really happened to this country when hemp became illegal, we were on the threshold of growing biofuels. And this is back in the 30s, 1930s that is, 90 years ago. You know, up until the early 1900s, actually it started in the late 1800s. Hemp was this country, USA's #1 cash crop. and it had been since the colonial era. So, it was breaking that economic base that was established in growing hemp. I mean, because virtually anybody can grow hemp. I mean, you need a plot of land, you need some sun, and you need some water, and some seeds. And you can go to town. Now, when you have a base for your energy source, that can be grown anywhere by virtually anyone who has these qualifications, it suddenly expands the political and economic base to the entire country, instead of limiting it only to those who are supplying coal, those who are supplying oil, those who own the nuclear power plants, those who own the hydroelectric dams. These are geographically isolated. They're easy to control. That's why there's no real talk about solar or developing solar. It's because the sun is over everybody's fucking head. It's much harder to tax something that you can acquire directly from this thing that's available to everybody, right? I mean, we've been talking about solar since the 70s. We should be like Star Wars by now. If the solar panel followed the same level of like concentration and market awareness as like your cell phone has, could you imagine? You look back to Gordon Gekko fucking car battery size cell phone, and then you pick up your Samsung whatever 9 SVG9, and you look at the thing and the amount of power that's the differential between those two. Okay, it does the same thing, works in relatively the same way, but the device that you're holding, say if you're holding your cell phone in your right hand and Gordon Gekko's in your left hand, the one in your right hand can do everything that was needed, like all of the infrastructure shit that was needed for that phone to connect to the rest of the world. The one in your left hand, Gordon Gekko phone. All the switches and satellites. There's more fucking technology in that Samsung device than there was in the entire network that was associated with Gordon Gekko's fucking phone in that cell phone. So, when you're in that kind of space, when you have that level of control and that level of utility and power in such a device, why aren't we using that to the maximum possibility? Anyway, this hemp thing I think is big because it's going to return the concentration, I think, of power back to individuals. The idea of homespun is going to come back. In the first glimpses of it we've already seen, and that's what things like this fucking hemp plane, that was 2012. Before that, back in like 2001, 2002, I read about some kid that refitted a vehicle to drive on gas, or I think it was a biodiesel that was derived from hemp oil. And that was back in 2001, 2002. So, this misadventure of oil, again, it's just about limiting power. But you got to consider how else that stifled the economy. If the average person were growing a plot of, say, 10, 20 hemp plants, it doesn't really take up a whole lot of room, and you don't have to tend them like you do cannabis to smoke, or marijuana rather. And so you could be growing that on your property and selling it. If you weren't interested in doing that, you could hire somebody or let them grow it on your property. Maybe they don't have any property, but maybe they got a green thumb. And they can turn that into money for both you and them, right? I think that if the average person had 10, 20 plants in their property, that what could be derived in terms of fuel, fabrics, oils, and apparently polymers now, and composites, the idea of need, the idea of a lack of having, or lack of supply or scarcity. You're talking about a fantasy now. You're talking about something that you read in a dystopian novel. You're not talking about what would be going on around you at that point. Anyway, I got this this thing here. I don't know if we're yeah, why not? We can get into this. French bank's colossal impact on the environment. And we're going to talk about this one because there's this claim made about cryptocurrencies that they're just like such a massive drain on the rest of the planet as far as like the environmental impact of them. And a lot of times the models that they use to back up that assertion, they don't include things like transporting oil and stuff like that in their calculations of exactly what costs are involved. So anyway, and I'm sure some of that is because both cryptocurrencies and regular currencies have, to some extent, shared impacts on that level. I would argue that cryptocurrencies, from mining the materials to make the video cards and the ASIC devices, to shipping them and storing them and selling them and you setting them up in your house and it being shipped to your house, between all of that cryptocurrency mining still pencils out way cheaper than the traditional monetary system that we've had. Continuing, this is on decrypt.co, and this is by Robert Stevens. So yes, penis. Report: French bank's colossal impact on the environment. A report this month by Oxfam and Friends of the Earth has described the environmental impact of large French banks as colossal. Last year, fossil fuel emissions from four major French banks, BNP Paribas, Crédit Agricole, Société Générale, and BPCE, funded the equivalent of almost 18 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions through their investments in companies like oil giant Total combined. That's more than 4.5 times the annual emissions generated by the entire French economy. Wow, that's pretty significant. I'm trying to find the volume here. There we go. That's a little better. Let's see where we are. With that ambitious climate action, 100 million people could fall into extreme poverty by 2030, claimed the report. Quote, yet the four major French multinational banks, which appear in the top 20 worldwide and in the top 10 in Europe, support and aggravate the global energy system's addiction to coal, gas, and oil. For comparison, Alex DeVries, founder of Bitcoin Energy Consumption Index Digiconomist, estimates that the global carbon emissions of the Bitcoin industry alone is 34 million tons, almost double that attributed to the French banks. However, these figures are calculated backwards from Bitcoin's hash rate and not gathered from the miners themselves. But it may not be all that bad. A study by CoinShares, which invests in cryptocurrencies, claims that 74% of the power used for Bitcoin mining is generated using renewable energy sources. But this report similarly uses approximations, such as regional averages, to derive this figure. Actually, it's more than that. There's a lot of logic involved, especially considering the locations where we're seeing the highest concentrations of investment in mining. And most of what we're seeing with regard to that is happening in China, and it's happening around rivers. So it's kind of logical to establish the idea that, you know, they're pulling hydropower and using that to mine with. It's a matter of cost, and the matter of shipping the chips comes into play too, because most of the mining is happening in China. The chipsets that are being manufactured in China aren't having to go elsewhere in order to be used. So they got to go like 3,000 to 8,000 miles to go anywhere else. So it's ship it or use it on site, and they're using it on site versus shipping it. Now, sure, they're having to ship it within their own country, and it's vast and all that other shit, but it's a lot cheaper to use it within China than it is to, say, ship them to somewhere in Texas or maybe the Pacific Northwest where they'll be set up to mine with. Just, it's part of that whole statistical process control thing, it all factors in. But anyway, there's something else that happened recently, and this one is, I think, of pretty high importance. And I don't know how I want to go about reporting it first, because I've got a lot of different sources here. So we might talk about that one because we talked about cannabis too. I suppose we can go with this one first, and then we'll hit back to the Manhattan thing aspect of this. This is on finance.yahoo.com. U.S. authorities arrest Ethereum research scientist Virgil Griffith for allegedly assisting North Korea in evading sanctions. Oh, you mean doing exactly what cryptocurrencies were designed to do? Okay. And this is by Stephen Zhang, and this is authored November 29th, 2019. So, yes, penis. The Office of the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York and the FBI announced today that it has arrested and charged Virgil Griffith for violating the U.S. sanctions laws and traveling to North Korea to, quote, deliver a presentation and technical advice on using cryptocurrency and blockchain technology to evade sanctions. Quote, as alleged, Virgil Griffith provided highly technical information to North Korea, knowing that this information could be used to help North Korea launder money and evade sanctions, U.S. Attorney U.S. Attorney Jeffrey S. Berman said in a statement, quote, in allegedly doing so, Griffith jeopardized the sanctions that both Congress and the President have enacted to place maximum pressure on North Korea's dangerous regime. You mean independent regime. According to Griffith's LinkedIn profile, he is a research scientist for the Ethereum Foundation. According to the U.S. authorities, in April 2019, Griffith traveled to North Korea to attend and present at the Pyongyang Blockchain and Cryptocurrency Conference, despite the U.S. Department of State denying his permission to travel to the country. U.S. authorities alleged that at the conference, Griffith and other attendees, quote, discussed how the DPRK, North Korea, could use blockchain and cryptocurrency technology to launder money and evade sanctions. Dude, if he already did that, it's too fucking late. After the conference, Griffith began formulating plans to facilitate the exchange of cryptocurrency between the DPRK and South Korea, despite knowing that assisting with such exchange would violate sanctions against the DPRK. Griffith has been charged with conspiring to violate the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which carries a maximum 20-year prison sentence. Oh, dude, it's got reactions, too. A says the irony is now he will really be under block and chain. Yeah, that's kind of ironic. Ishkabu says, freedom of speech does not mean freedom of consequences. This is an interference with the security of this nation and should be punished. Yeah, you're full of shit, dude. Rocco says, would be Edwin Snowden that fought the law and the law won. Yeah, that could be called that. Max says, criminal activity is the killer app for cryptocurrencies. Yeah, you can go fuck yourself too. Nobody you'd know says, with a name like Virgil Griffith, I hope he doesn't drop the soap where he's going. Yeah, whatever, dude. Nika Noonan says, cryptocurrency has only one real purpose, and that's to evade and facilitate criminal activity. That's not true at all, dude. Matteo Salvini says, we need stricter repercussions for coward traders like this person. Yeah, okay, he's a fucking educator. Go fuck yourself. Dave says, sounds like a case of freedom of speech. Arresting someone over a presentation on evading sanctions cannot be an arrestable offense. If anything, this is a clear violation of the First Amendment. God damn right. And Sam says, every day is a new crypto criminal story time to outlaw and arrest participants. Yeah, you can go fuck yourself too. And Tim says, you know what can't be sanctioned or stopped? Bitcoin. God damn right. And I'm going to give that an upvote. Because that's just what I'm going to do. Okay. Never mind. I'm not going to create an account for Yahoo just to do that. But anyway, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, this person was not involved in a criminal activity, or not what could be considered a criminal activity. What this person was doing was educating. And the fact of the matter is that all of the people, and I mean to a single one, that suggested this guy is a traitor, or suggested that some book needs to be thrown at him, let me tell you something. In another, I would say, year, maybe 2, you are going to be thanking him. You are going to be idolizing him. Because you personally are probably going to be in a situation, or have been in a situation, whereby cryptocurrencies would have allowed you to continue using your own money. That some little glitch, some hack, some additional tax will be placed upon you, and you will notice very quickly that you are losing a lot of money. And in this circumstance, had that monetary value been stored in Bitcoin or another cryptocurrency, you would not have experienced that personal loss. If anything, you would most likely have appreciated your savings in value. Now, I say most likely, and don't quote me on that. It's up to you to decide whether or not you want to involve yourself in cryptocurrencies. I will say this, though. I personally am. I'm not rich, but it is how I feed myself. And I know a lot of people in that appear to be influencers in cryptocurrencies cannot say the same thing. You know, so when they're talking about, oh, we need to regulate this or whatever, they're talking about things that aren't currently impacting them, that will only impact people like you in the event they were to get their way. Because, as I've reported before, the original text of the of BitLicense, and I don't know if they've modified this. Supposedly they've gone through multiple drafts, but I can guarantee you they probably did not take out the sections that make the head of the NYDFS more or less king of crypto within the state of New York, and everybody who does business with the state of New York, or people of New York. Is that they can issue all kinds of licenses to whomever they want, with or without the application fee. They could waive the fee. They could prescribe a probationary license, and then at a later time decide, you know what, I want to make that probationary license a full license, without modifying the any kind of agreement to pay us. We're just going to issue them a bit license. maybe they've already got some sort of banking license with us, and so we want to be extra cool to them because they're already players on our team. So we're going to go ahead and give them a break and not make them pay that application fee. And of course, we're not going to bother to regulate them anymore because we're already regulating them. We're already monitoring everything they're doing. So there's no need to impose any more regulatory friction on our bestie of friends. But you, Joe Blow Plumber, decides he wants to get into cryptocurrencies. Oh no, you can't do that. That's what they're trying to say. You can't dedicate some of your hardware in your own home, some of your electricity that you may or may not be generating yourself, and some of the bandwidth that you are renting every month to the purposes of maintaining a global financial network between other peers that are exactly like you. That's not in their interests, because they don't receive their bribes from you. Now that may change in the future, and personally I believe with the type of economic base that can be developed with cryptocurrencies, that's exactly what will happen. Only when we do give them the money, we'll be able to see exactly where it's spent. And by golly, if 99.9% of it doesn't go exactly where we said we wanted it to go, they're not going to get any fucking money next time. And it'll be optional on our part whether or not we actually pay them. If we notice that they, rather than putting it into Social Security, they put it towards a contract with General Dynamics for like 10 million robot drones or some shit like that. We're going to say, I don't want to fund that. So, no, I'm not going to give you any money. And then even if they do get the fucking robot army, they're not going to be able to fund it. This is what's changed in cryptocurrencies, and there are a shit ton of people out there that are trying to take that perception, that idea, away from you. Hold on to it. Let's go ahead and throw back down into some music. And as far as where we're going to go with music, I think we should go with some Kingdom of Sorrow myself. And the song, there's this one song on this album that I really like. And where is it? Here it is. God's Law in the Devil's Land by Kingdom of Sorrow here on Coin Metal. And that was Fear Factory with Controlled Demolition. Sorry about that. I had somebody take me on a whole different tangent, and I didn't want to fall down that hole, and so I've refrained. So you'll have to admire my refraining. Anyway, I've been digging around, and it seems to me that there's more to this story, and a lot more than is on the surface. See, I've suspected for a while now that there are elements within what was, I don't know if they're even still formerly a company, Blockstream, Liquid, the people that are involved with basically Lightning Labs, because all of these entities have been trying to direct Bitcoin's development to being one of a global settlement layer instead of Bitcoin. And the problem with this mentality shift is that it doesn't include the idea of who exactly provides the Bitcoin network, i.e. the public. And not just the public here in the US, the public everywhere. They're all participating in this. So, I came across this article here, and I want to get into it because this is something that I think will impact all of us. If you're somebody who's been involved in crypto Twitter for any duration of time, you might have noticed a recent uptick in FUD concerning Ethereum. Now, there's things that Ethereum does that duplicate the effects of all of these wonderful second layer options that these people are in Blockstream and Lightning Labs are trying to provide. So effectively, that makes Ethereum direct competition for Bitcoin, right? But see, I believe that these entities are not only involved in Bitcoin at the development level for both the Lightning Network and side chains and all that other bullshit, but I've also believed that they're the same entities that are involved with Tether, and that these same entities have connections to places like the Federal Reserve. And the reason I suggest that this connection exists is because all of the entities that would be dropping the hammer on Tether for effectively creating counterfeit dollars and circulating them into cryptocurrency exchanges while circulating digital dollars out in exchange, that all of these entities are operating in cahoots with one another. And what makes me believe that with regard to this article and this subject in whole is that this could be, if you viewed it from the right angle, it could be construed as a hit on Ethereum, or an attempted hit on Ethereum, or the foundations of Ethereum, and take it out of commission so it isn't competing with Bitcoin. See, there's a problem with that. The problem being that effectively Ethereum is a larger network than the Bitcoin network at this time. There are far more projects that are dependent upon the Ethereum network right now than Bitcoin. Like billions of dollars more. And so there's a lot more interest on the side of Ethereum maintaining its fidelity and continuing on. And so even if they were to arrest the entire Ethereum Foundation, including Vitalik himself, if they could gin up some sort of charges and whatnot that they can justify locking all those guys up in Guantanamo Bay, that can happen. And you know what? It won't change a fucking thing. Ethereum will continue to run. And currently, I noted that also that according to at least one report I read, it was suggesting that a lot of Ethereum and a lot of the projects on Ethereum were dependent upon AWS instances. And so we can expect that that if this is true, if what I'm talking about is the continued pressure on trying to eliminate Ethereum, that will most likely be the next target. That some sort of federal entity will put some sort of pressure on Amazon, and because Amazon is up to their ass in federal contracts and all that other shit, they'll comply and shut down AWS instances that are on the Ethereum network. You can bet if that's what's going on right now, if they're trying to take apart Ethereum and get rid of it, that's exactly what's going on right now. And I mean, I'm saying that if that's what's going on right now, that will most likely be the next target, because they can only really hit at centralized targets like that. Where they're going to have difficulty is that other 30% of the network. And you can bet your ass that if that 60% of that hash rate goes away and the fucking difficulty goes down for Ethereum, Ethereum is going to figure out really fucking quick why they're very, very happy that they couldn't get the miners to switch from proof of work. Because it's going to go back to being a network dependent upon your kid, your next door neighbor's kid, you, dedicating just your GPU to mining for Ethereum in the times that you're not using it for gaming or whatever else. But it'll become profitable for you to mine Ethereum all of a sudden. And so the incentive changes. And I believe that if that incentive does change, that a lot more people will start mining Ethereum. And that will, if anything, that will strengthen the network itself and strengthen the coin itself and all of the projects that are dependent upon it. So I think that if this is true, and if that's what's going on here, really, that people are trying to take out Ethereum so it's not in competition with Bitcoin anymore, then I think that's the next target that we'll see. But I think that will be the reciprocal effect, that instead of seeing that Ethereum network go away, that we're going to see a significant number of people that for whatever reason either stopped mining or were thinking about mining will come right on in and dedicate hashing power to it, because they want that coin, sweet coin, just like everybody else. This is where I think that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are going to show their resilience. And it is why they were designed to work the way that they are. So, if you follow out a couple of development paths, either mining being done solely by hyper-industrial groups, that one, or everything being dependent upon the second layer and the focus on mining being shifted away from mining itself onto, trying to maintain this secondary network on top of it. I think that between those two, you see that the interests in cryptocurrencies can be highly centralized, at least on the production end, and again, these highly isolatable points. Concentrations of hardware, concentrations of mining, concentrations of brain power. These are soft points in any kind of corporate structure. But we're not talking about a corporate structure with regard to cryptocurrencies. We're talking about something as close to a physical living body, organic, as has ever been, where people who are interested and those who can derive an interest from it are dedicating time, effort, and hardware to it. And that's a pretty low bar for entry. It's not dependent upon your age, it's not dependent upon your gender, it's not dependent upon your sexual identity or your nation of origin or your religious beliefs. The transaction either clears or it doesn't. The network is working or it's not. But again, these aren't soft points in a cryptocurrency network. Not like they are in a corporate structure. Where like if Amazon, if the federal government really wanted to take down Amazon, it could take out its corporate structure between, assassinations and arrests and completely kill the project, kill the company. You can't do that with Ethereum. You can, like I said, you could arrest every single person who's ever done a git commit for Ethereum. You can arrest the entire Ethereum Foundation. You can arrest all of the people that threw any money at it in the last, 5 or 6 years now that it's been in existence. You could hit every single one of them. You put them all in jail, put them all in fucking Guantanamo Bay. You know what's going to happen? Zero. Ethereum will still exist after you have already done that. So rather than waste all that effort and waste all that capital, why not say, no, we're not going to do that. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to create a federal entity that is going to set up smart contracts for us, for international trade with other countries. And we're not going to have this entity limited to those that we don't have on sanctions lists. We're just going to have it completely open because, in fact, the cryptocurrency networks that these transactions would be occurring on, these smart contracts would be occurring on, are public in nature. And, we haven't even gone into the aspect of, if they were to take down Ethereum in any way, shape, or form, if they were to do that, there's several other networks that do exactly what Ethereum does, that are both existing and being created. So, again, we're seeing some attacks on cryptocurrencies, and we're seeing attacks on Ethereum in particular. Whether or not this is associated with those attacking Ethereum or other cryptocurrencies, I couldn't tell you, but it would be in line with their mentality with regard to how they address competition. And so we're going to start this, I guess, from maybe this one. I don't know. I've got like the case, and then I've got background on this guy. So we're just going to hit this article for a opener. Actually, we'll just do this because that'll open us up for a little more background on this guy. And this is by the justice.gov, or it's on justice.gov in Southern District of New York. Manhattan U.S. Attorney announces arrest of U.S. citizen for assisting North Korea in evading sanctions. And this is authored on Friday, November 29th, 2019. And no direct attribution. So, continuing on. Jeffrey S. Berman, the United States Attorney for Southern District of New York, John C. Demers, and the Assistant Attorney General for National Security, John Brown, Assistant Director of Federal Bureau of Investigation, Counterintelligence Division, and William F. Sweeney, Jr., the Assistant Director in charge of the New York Field Office of the FBI, announced today the unsealing of a criminal complaint charging Virgil Griffith, a U.S. citizen, in violating the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, EPA, by traveling to the Democratic People's Republic of China, DPRK, or North Korea, in order to deliver a presentation and technical advice on using cryptocurrency and blockchain technology to evade sanctions. Griffith was arrested at Los Angeles International Airport yesterday and will be presented in federal court in Los Angeles later today. The U.S. Attorney General the U.S. Attorney Jeffrey S. Berman stated, quote, "As alleged, Virgil Griffith provided highly technical information to North Korea that they could have gone online, knowing that this information could be used to help North Korea launder money and evade sanctions, just like has been demonstrated in several YouTube videos. In allegedly doing so, Griffith jeopardized the sanctions that both Congress and the President have enacted to place maximum pressure on North Korea's dangerous regime." Assistant Attorney General John Demers said, quote, "Despite receiving warnings not to go, Griffith allegedly traveled to one of the United States' foremost adversaries, North Korea, where he taught his audience how to use blockchain technology to evade sanctions. By this complaint, we begin the process of seeking justice for such conduct." Yeah. FBI Assistant Director in Charge William F. Sweeney, Jr. said, quote, "There are deliberate reasons sanctions have been levied on North Korea. The country and its leader pose a literal threat to our national security and that of our allies. Mr. Griffith allegedly traveled to North Korea without the permission from the federal government and with knowledge that what he was doing was against the law." No, I don't think he did know that. "We cannot allow anyone to evade sanctions because the consequences of North Korea obtaining funding, technology, and information to further its desire to build nuclear weapons put the world at risk. It's even more egregious than a U.S. citizen allegedly chose to aid our adversary." No, they're only our adversary because they have nuclear weapons that will prevent us from invading their country and deposing of their government, which we've seemed to do every other fucking place that doesn't have nuclear weapons. So, I don't really see the problem here, dude. Anyway, continuing on. According to the complaint unsealed today in Manhattan Federal Court, pursuant to the IEEPA and Executive Order 13466, United States persons are prohibited from exporting any goods, services, or technology to the DPRK without a license from the Department of the Treasury, Office of Foreign Assets Control. Fuck yeah, it's open source software, man. It's all over the fucking internet. He's not disseminating any new information to them. They probably already knew every fucking thing he was telling them. Continuing on. And actually, I got another thing I could chase up here that'll establish that end of the case. Continuing on. In or about April 2019, Griffith traveled to the DPRK to attend and present to the Pyongyang Blockchain and Cryptocurrency Conference, the DPRK Cryptocurrency Conference, despite that the U.S. Department of State had denied Griffith permission to travel to the DPRK. Griffith presented at the DPRK Cryptocurrency Conference, knowing that doing so violated sanctions against the DPRK. At no time did Griffith obtain permission from OFAC to provide goods, services, or technology to the DPRK. I guarantee you, they already had access to everything that he provided. Continuing on. At the DPRK Cryptocurrency Conference, Griffith and other attendees discussed how the DPRK could use blockchain and cryptocurrency technology to launder money and evade sanctions. Griffith's presentation at the DPRK Cryptocurrency Conference had been approved by DPRK officials and focused on, among other things, how blockchain technology, including a, quote, smart contract, could be used to benefit the DPRK. That's not the same thing. Continuing on. Griffith identified several DPRK Cryptocurrency Conference attendees who appeared to work for the North Korean government and who, during his presentation, asked Griffith specific questions about blockchain and cryptocurrency and prompted discussions on technical aspects of those technologies. That's not the same thing as deliberately informing them on how to evade U.S. sanctions. I bet you we're going to find out that a lot of these accusations are completely baseless, that we'll be able to watch. I looked for the text of his presentation, but I haven't been able to find it yet. Anyway, continuing on. After the DPRK Cryptocurrency Conference, Griffith began formulating plans to facilitate the exchange of cryptocurrency between the DPRK and South Korea, despite knowing that assisting with such an exchange would violate sanctions against the DPRK. Griffith also encouraged other U.S. citizens to travel to North Korea, including to attend the same DPRK Cryptocurrency Conference the following year. Finally, Griffith announced his intentions to renounce his U.S. citizenship and began researching how to purchase citizenship from other countries. That seems like a whole different thing. Continuing on. Virgil Griffith, 36, is a resident of Singapore and citizen of the United States. Griffith is charged with conspiring to violate the IEEPA, which carries a maximum term of 20 years in prison. The maximum potential sentence is prescribed by Congress, and it is provided here for informational purposes only, as any sentencing of the defendant will be determined by the judge. Mr. Berman praised the outstanding investigative work of the FBI and its New York Field Office Counterintelligence Division and thanked the Department of Justice's National Security Division, Counterintelligence and Export Control Section for their assistance. The case is being handled by the Offices of Terrorism and International Narcotics Unit. Why is it narcotics? Assistant U.S. Attorneys Kimberly Ravener, Michael K. Krause, and Kyle A. Wershba are in charge of the case, with assistance from trial attorneys Christian Ford and Matthew J. McKenzie of the Counterintelligence and Export Control Section. The charge in the complaint is merely an accusation, and the defendant is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. Yeah, that last phrase is very, very important here. The charge in the complaint is merely an accusation, and the defendant is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. So yeah, there's really no cause to have arrested him at this point, I think. It's just that he came onto U.S. soil and that was his mistake. Anyway, so yeah, the thing is that he did not disseminate anything to the DPRK that they did not have access to already. If they were intent on evading U.S. sanctions and utilizing Ethereum in order to do so, the resources were fully available to them everywhere. And you know, the funny thing about this is that the DPRK has already been openly accused of violating all kinds of trade sanctions utilizing cryptocurrencies. So it's not like Griffith was teaching this dog any new tricks. And by the federal government's own assertion. You know, but I think that we're going to continue to see pressures like this, and they're all unofficial, but I think they're meant to hobble Ethereum. You know, it doesn't have any real national security threat here. It's just a bunch of fucking grandstanding. The fact of the matter is that cryptocurrencies are apolitical. They're anational. The fact that they are that and facilitate commerce in such a manner is wholly outside the control of Virgil Griffith and the United States government. Because again, Americans are not the only participants in all of this. The Chinese are up to their ass in it. So you know, again, trying to put pressure on Ethereum by just addressing U.S. people, I think it's very short-sighted. And if anything, it's probably just to put a lot of FUD. You know, again, this is just an accusation. It's not actually... they're probably not even trying to prosecute him on it. Anyway. So, I want to follow it up on this. Let's see. I wanted to follow it up with a little bit of stuff on Virgil Griffith. Because this, you know, just to give you an idea of the character of the guy, online at least, previous to this. And this is on the NewYorkTimes.com, Internet Man of Mystery. And this is by Virginia Heffernan. My apologies, Virginia. So no penis. This is authored November 21st, 2008. So 11 years ago. Girls hang on, Virgil Griffith. This is no exaggeration. At parties, they cling to the arms of the 25-year-old hacker whose reason for being, he says, is, quote, to make the internet a better and more interesting place. The founder of the data mining tool called Wikiscanner, Griffith is also a visiting researcher at the mysterious Santa Fe Institute where, quote, complex systems are studied. He was once charged, wide-eyed rumor has it, with sedition. No wonder girls whisper secrets in his ear and laugh merrily at his arcane jokes. Wikiscanner, which Griffith created last year, makes it possible to figure out which organization made which edits to a Wikipedia entry to cross-referencing IP addresses with a database of IP address owners. You can imagine how much fun this tool is to deploy. To see how someone with a Senate.gov address tinkers with the Jeremiah Wright entry, or how Diebold apparently protects its reputation by deleting criticism of its voting machines and political connections. The promise of Wikiscanner is to help free Wikipedia from both propaganda and sabotage. But Griffith says he also aspires to, quote, create minor public relations disasters for companies and organizations I dislike. He's a troublemaker then, a twerp, and a magnet for tech world groupies. At the WebConnect conference in Southern California last month, I saw it with my own eyes. Griffith, enjoying a White Russian that I first mistook for chocolate milk, reveled in the attention of his female fans. He smiled broadly. He seemed like a young Henry Kissinger, but sweet, or Arthur Fonzarelli, but not a dropout. Born to doctor parents in 1983, Griffith, who agreed to tell me about himself by email after the conference, grew up in what he calls a, quote, mostly conservative family in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Problems with extrafamilial authority emerged early on, and he spent several school days in detention. In his public school, he worried about gangs. His mother pulled him out and briefly homeschooled him. Eventually, he graduated from the Alabama School of Math and Science, even though he once threatened to sue the school for a proposed policy of mandatory drug testing, and skipped his final exams to travel in Greece. Cheating at video games was a hobby early on. Quote, I remember in particular there was a Star Wars game, X-Wing, where you could shoot down Imperial spaceships, he recalled in an email message. Only one of my computer-controlled wingmen was any good. My first hack was at age 9, was noticing there was a file for each pilot, and I simply copied the pilot file for the good wingman 20 times, giving me a plentiful supply of the best wingmen from then on. Beating X-Wing must have been supernaturally gratifying because, then and there, Griffith seemed to have devoted himself to finding and exploiting vulnerabilities in systems of all kinds. As he once wrote to me, quote, I love the ingenuity that goes into trying to think of the most perverse things you can do within a game that the designers would have never intended or foreseen someone trying. You step back and look at the entire interacting, breathing system and pick out the counterintuitive, unbalanced, seldom explored parts and look for a way for these parts to interact such that they play off each other synergistically, amplifying their power to influence everything else, potentially spiraling out of control. This cast of mind, Griffith wrote, quote, gave me a knack for computer security. During his freshman year in college at the University of Alabama, he read an article in 2600, the Hacker Quarterly, that revealed potential flaws in the Blackboard transaction system, which administers the multi-purpose campus ID card used at many American colleges and universities. Griffith approached Billy Hoffman, the author of the article, and a student at Georgia Tech about collaborating on the problem. The pair worked for months on a demonstration of the weaknesses of Blackboard technology. In April 2003, they were hours away from presenting their findings at a security conference in Atlanta when Blackboard hit them with a restraining order. The company then sued Griffith and Hoffman for something considerably less than trying to overthrow the government, so much for the rumors. In fact, they were charged with violating the Consumer Fraud and Abuse Act, among other things. The parties settled out of court later that year. The terms of the settlement are sealed. But Griffith is still out and about, so I would assume, or at least he was. Continuing on. Griffith says he likes to think of himself as a superhero of online anarchy, a, quote, disruptive technologist. But there's another side to the mischief maker, from Tuscaloosa, a more contemplative side. In 2002, Griffith, like many other scientifically inclined young people, fell under the spell of Douglas R. Hofstadter's Pulitzer Prize-winning 1979 bestseller, Gödel, Escher, Bach. It was a revelation. In downtime from his life as an internet poltergeist, Griffith started to explore quieter, more ethically defensible intellectual pleasures. Quote, I wrestled with materialism, he explained, referring to the vexing fact that the miracle of consciousness somehow inheres in 3 pounds of quivery human flesh. Why couldn't a smart guy like himself make a computational device with the self-awareness of a human mind? This question has stayed with Griffith. Quote, I am immensely interested in the singularity, a hypothetical event Griffith calls, quote, a school of thought which cites, among other things, trends in technological growth that predict that around 2040, a mere $1,000, we will be able to buy a computer with the processing power and even the self-awareness, he added, of the human brain. Griffith is quick to note that he knows how wacko that sounds. Quote, there's an aura of rapture of the nerds around these ideas, he admitted, but he remains enthusiastic about them. After the Blackboard lawsuit, Griffith decided to transfer to Indiana University in hopes of studying with Hofstadter, who teaches there. Griffith banked on getting a cognitive science fellowship, but the program was canceled that year, though not before he had quit Alabama and signed a lease in Bloomington. Griffith felt stuck, but rather than enroll as an undergraduate, he found a position as a research associate at the university's School of Informatics. A pretty good trick. If you want to go to college somewhere, start by working with the faculty. Eventually, Griffith took some classes at Indiana, though he avoided various required courses. Nevertheless, he was able to persuade the University of Alabama that, quote, his life experiences to date and his published papers constituted the remaining required courses to graduate, and in 2007 he received his bachelor's degree. Last year, Griffith entered a graduate program to study theories of consciousness at California Institute of Technology. At the same time, he conducts research at the Santa Fe Institute, which is kind of a RAND corporation for the post-Cold War world, a home for the study of self-organizing systems. From his education to his professional career to his social life, Griffith seems to have hacked everything. But what makes him more than a garden variety internet troublemaker? Perhaps that's all he is. But Griffith is not 14 now; he's 25, and techno-foolery may not satisfy him forever. The allure of real science is powerful, even as the hacker high life. Girls, notoriety, White Russians can be hard to resist. Hackerdom requires rewards spontaneity, curiosity, and ingenuity, Griffith told me. Science rewards rigor and forging solid bedrock to stand on, which means a lot of carefully dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Although scientific questions are harder, more abstract, and tend to have less immediate influence on the world, the questions are deeper, and the answers so uplifting and transcendently beautiful that contact with them is a genuine spiritual experience. Yeah, I agree, sir. And so let's see here. Yeah, that was about it. Thank you, New York Times. And the author of this, Virginia Heffernan. Thank you. Or Heffernan, rather. But yeah, so there you have it. This guy has been in the internet and on the internet and trying to exploit it to its most advantage to everyone, it seems, at least to me. And it seems like that's what he's being punished for. Although it's funny, on his Wikipedia page, there's even associations between him and Aaron Swartz. And those of you who know who Aaron Swartz is, you probably could understand a reason why somebody like this would be a target of the U.S. government. I mean, Aaron Swartz is more or less kind of like nagged into suicide, but there's more to that subject, and I'm not going to go into it, but nothing you can't find out on your own. But yeah, so this guy, it seems like he's a crypto-libertarian, if not anarchist, which, again, I'm not opposed to either. But, being an anarchist in cryptocurrencies is not a difficult thing to do. And it seems to me that there's some people out there that are trying to take that aspect out of cryptocurrencies, and here's the problem with it. That in cryptocurrencies, we're not just consumers. We're not just end users. We are the network. And not just me or you, everybody. Everybody who is participating in mining is a part of a network. And so that being the case, it's not just in the interest of the people that are holding these coins. It is in the interest of everybody who's running that hardware that's maintaining those networks that these projects continue. And so again, these soft target hits, if they could be defined to be that, are again just that. They're soft target hits. You're going to get the one guy. You're not going to get the project. And just evidence of that is Ethereum Classic. And really, anybody who is pursuing this idea of, and again, if assuming, of course, that it is a targeted attack on Ethereum, which I kind of think it is, because there's like multi-pronged attacks going on Ethereum right now. Where, like, if you're a member of crypto Twitter, you've seen more than a ton of FUD concerning Ethereum over the last probably 2 months, I would say. So, and despite that fact, Ethereum is still kind of going up in price. So, it did take a dip today, but I think that was probably more related to this than anything. Again, Ethereum Classic, Neo, EOS, several other projects. I think Tron, you could probably consider it the same way. Where these are all networks that they're under social media pressure, as we've seen recently. But, we saw something like this prior to the previous alt bloom. And not just the proliferation of altcoins, but also the increase in relative value of them versus Bitcoin and other currencies, other fiat currencies. And to me, that the first and second alt bloom that have already happened, I believe those were kind of the legitimization of the idea of altcoins. And so again, this type of attack, it was appropriate. It would have been more appropriate to attack it like this in, say, 2013, because there wasn't a whole fundament established. A few networks out there, one of which rivals Bitcoin, the first and most valuable, quote-unquote, cryptocurrency in existence. Ethereum, cheaper, faster, and a bigger network. That it seems like more than a confluence of coincidences. I believe that these attacks are coordinated, but like I said, the appropriate time to do them would have been like 2013, 2014, when we saw the first proliferation of altcoins. This kind of pressure on them, if you were a government entity and that you were interested in limiting everybody to one cryptocurrency, if any at all, it would have been the time to put the pressure on them. But now, the market has matured a great deal. And the one problem with attacking anything like Ethereum is that there are thousands of developers out there for it. So let's just assume, just for the sake of argument, that they succeed and they take down Ethereum. Those developers, they're not going to go away. Chances are they're going to migrate to similar projects. And they'll just be that more careful about how tightly they associate their real-world identities with the project they're involved in. And so thus investigating them and persecuting them and prosecuting them becomes that much more difficult. We've seen this before. Satoshi Nakamoto disappeared to the wind. We have no idea how much influence he may personally be having right now, still within the cryptocurrency space, without anybody knowing exactly who he is. And with that, I want to go ahead and throw back down into some music. And so, some Sixth is playing right now, and I have not played any Sixth yet, so let's go ahead and get into that. Let's see here, and get all the way down here. And, yeah, I think this one's appropriate. Century of the Narcissist, here on CoinMetal. And that was Soundgarden with Rusty Cage. Yeah. And I do believe that at some point or another we all will break our rusty cage and progress forward into what this century's technology can really deliver to us. Personally, I believe it'll be something more fantastic that any federal regulator has ever thought of. And it is my firm belief that regardless of what does happen to any individual one person, that I don't believe these projects are actually going to stop. That they will, if anything, become more pervasive and distributed than they currently are. So in my mind, the proper thing for governments to do is to participate like we do. If you do that, you'll have the influence in the networks that you want. And as long as the access doesn't change to anybody else, you'll maintain everybody else's interests that's currently interested in it. Now, how that will affect things, I can't really tell you. I can't promise you anything. What I can say is this, that when it comes to the value of our total assets, this could be a way that the federal and state governments could be contributing to their own sustainability. You know where all the rivers are. You know where all the hydroelectric hydropower can be drawn from. You've got the capability to license that to people, which is probably even more profitable than trying to build the infrastructure and tend to it yourself. The point of the matter is that there are far more productive ways that the U.S. and other governments can be interacting with cryptocurrencies. And trying to corral it all around to where we're crammed back into the same framework that we escaped with Bitcoin is not really serving anybody in the longer term. It is essential that these projects be able to endure the entire development staff of them being arrested at any one time. These projects do have to be more secure than any company can be. And so far, Bitcoin has proven to be exactly that. As much as it has been monkeyed around and whatnot and manipulated, it still does operate as it was originally intended. That you can still use a regular old QT wallet on the network You can host your own node. You can modify the code and redeploy it as you wish. And so nothing has really changed. And that is how it is going to stay. We in the United States could apply other kinds of pressure to it, or at least the governments can. But invariably, we're just going to see the facility and utility taken somewhere else. So maybe we're pressured through GitHub. That the U.S. government decides to get down on GitHub and make them take down all the code that we've posted there, all the Git commits, all that other shit, and take it down. Okay, so we lost one distribution venue. Does that mean that's going to end? No. There are several other entities that existed and utilities that existed prior to the existence of GitHub that do the same thing that GitHub allows us to do. So again, trying to swat at these soft targets and trying to address this as though this is some sort of corporate thing, futile. If you dedicated the same amount of money and the same amount of hardware and manpower to simply mining cryptocurrencies, you'll get far more out of it. Because I guarantee it's already cost millions of dollars just to tag Virgil. It's going to cost you even